Great. Okay, well, why don't we get started? Hello, everyone. My name is Cary James, and I am Chief Executive of the World Hepatitis Alliance. And I'd like to welcome you all to this NOhep Visionaries meeting here at Apostle with the very important topic of the decentralization of services for Hep B and C in the Asia Pacific. If people aren't familiar with the Alliance, we're a network of community-based and patient-led organizations around the world, including almost 70 in the Asia Pacific and Sierra region. So we have lots of great civil society organizations right here in Asia Pacific. And I think decentralization of services is something that's really at the heart of what we do. And really one of the big reasons why the Visionaries program was started was to bring physicians and community closer together to find ways to collaborate and to better serve our communities. So we've got some fantastic speakers, so I'm not going to talk for much longer. So we're going to do all of the presentations first, and then we'll have time for discussion at the end. Great. So our first speaker is Dr. Hsu, Director of Center for Liver Diseases at the Ida Hospital and Associate Professor at I-Shou University here in Taiwan. So Dr. Hsu.
Can I sit here or go there?
Either, whichever you prefer.
I prefer to sit in here.
Yeah.
Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the organizing committee for giving me the opportunity to sit here and speak with you. Certainly, it's my great honor. And as a doctor, a clinical investigator's interest in Hep B infections, I think I'm blessed because there has been so much has been learned from this disease, from the natural histories. We know that the viral activity is the driving force of the disease. And we now know that right after the infection, there is integration of viral DNA into the host genome. And we also knew effective vaccine to prevent infections. We also have not so ideal, I'm not going to call it a panacea, but effective medication to control the progression of the disease. However, we are not maximizing the use of these effective tools to reduce the burden globally and also in this country or this region. So when we look into the literatures, or also in the practice of my healthcare systems, certainly there are a lot of gaps or barriers in the care cascade of HBV infection. So, well, there are a lot of numbers and figures, and I'm sure the audience must be aware of this. So I'm not going to put slides like a didactic presentation, but remember that there are still nearly 3 million people living with this disease. So when I heard my colleague saying that HPV infection is going to be a history because of the effective vaccine. So in the future, we don't have to worry about HPV. But how about right now? There are 3 million people living, 300 million people around the world living with this virus, and people are dying from this disease every day, probably every hour, globally, but maybe every minute. But so as a doctor, when I look back, when I encounter a patient whose clinical outcomes are not so ideal or not so good, for example, development of liver cancer, dying from complications of liver cirrhosis because Hep B, and I found that somehow he or she has missed the chance to use this knowledge. We know there's much to be learned from this infection, but we have learned much from natural history to infection, to vaccination, to treatment, but we did not. I mean, there is still room for improvement for us to put this knowledge into action to help patients improve their quality of life. And one of the major obstacles in my perspectives is that we doctors often think in a perspective not necessarily from the angles of the patients. For example, we often talk about the risk of developing liver cancers. Well, the risk of among this population, conversation among doctors would be like, well, the risk of liver cancer would be like 5% in 10 years. That's for a population. But for that patient, he or she wanted to know if I will develop liver cancer or not. And we often, doctors, I'm not doctor, we often decide on behalf of the patients without even asking his or her opinions. So, this disease is full of disparity and uncertainty. So I don't really know this gentleman or this lady in front of me is going to develop a liver cancer or not. I cannot be 100% certain about it. But the systems or our current practice limitations kind of restrict us to empower the patient to take his or her thoughts into the decision. We sometimes just say, well, the reimbursement guidelines doesn't allow me to prescribe them, or I can prescribe the medication for you, but you have to pay for yourself. Or the current guidelines does not support a treatment for you. But then he will ask, does it mean that I don't need treatment? I'm not going to develop cancer? Well, the risk is lower for you, but who can guarantee? So, this kind of struggling, for me, that's a kind of struggling. We know something about the disease. We know there is uncertainty in this disease. And we also know there is disparity in this disease. My patients, I work in a hospital where the neighborhood is kind of relatively poor. It's an urban region, but the outskirts of a city, big city. But anyway, so for example, we would like our patients, untreated patients, to frequently be monitored for like viremia or the viral load. And there is restrictions from the reimbursement to limit the frequency of viral DNA testing. So from time to time, I will ask the patient, your serum ALT is a little bit higher than so-called normal range. I think checking viral DNA for you will be informative. Then he or she will say, no, it's cost to 2,000, not US dollars, 2,000 NT dollars. But that's a barrier for them. So what the guidelines say cannot be really applicable to all the patients. And imagine this is Taiwan. So we are supposed to be quite rich relatively as compared with other regions around the world. How about African countries? All these guidelines recommend testing for viral DNA, how frequent the frequency. All the testing requires the so-called FibroScan, this non-invasive test for liver stiffness. Even in Taiwan, it's not affordable to every patient. And for the time being, the reimbursement does not take this non-invasive methods into the coverage. So imagine how could this be applicable globally. So that's why I'm not surprised to see that the Polaris collaborators they project that the burden of this disease, the cases of mortality from HBV will actually increase from 2015 to 2030s. in contrast to the laudable goals of WHO to reduce the mortality by how much? 65%. No, it is increasing. So even though the modeling is reasonable, so the modeling study in 2016 seems reasonable, maximize the effectiveness of vaccine, maximize the effectiveness of antiviral treatment. It could be doable, but we are not doing it right now. So I personally, I respect Professor Chen's efforts. He's quite enthusiastic, passionate to organize some efforts among patients, among non-medical communities to make their voice be heard. At the end of the day, it is the patients who had to bear the outcome of a disease, not doctors. I would say that we advise, we suggest, but the consequence has been borne by the patient. So I definitely I support that the voice of patients be heard. And when we consider treating patients with disparity, uncertainties, we must allow the patient to join the process of decisions. I cannot be responsible for a man or lady's life. Say that, trust me, I guarantee you will not develop cancer. I guarantee you your disease will be okay. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And there's so many great messages in there. I mean, I think the idea that sometimes the perspective of the patient and the doctor are very different, and it's important to be aware of that. And of course, the big topic at the moment is around simplification of hepatitis B treatment, and even in resource-rich settings, where people assume are resource-rich settings like Taiwan, that it's still difficult to and expensive for patients to be able to adhere to those guidelines. So thank you so much. So we're going to move on to our next speaker, which is Professor Dai. And he's from the Taiwan Liver Cancer Association. He's going to speak on the elimination of HCV in Taiwan and the efforts and the role of NGOs. So Dr. Dai.
Good morning. So welcome to Taiwan, and I'm so glad to have this opportunity to share this topic with you. I also prepared some slides. I want to just talk about the NGO function and what we have done in Taiwan. So I come from Kaohsiung. I'm now a medical doctor. In addition, I'm a professor in school. However, that is not important because I'm so glad that I'm also work on the NGO, that is Taiwan Liver Research Foundation. I'm the medical officer for 25 years. Since this, very happy to have that. You can see when I was young, okay? So we have this foundation. Taiwan Liver Research Foundation is one of the voting member. Actually, it's the first voting member in Taiwan in WHA. Yeah, in Taiwan, World Hepatitis Alliance. So we do our best to do everything to help eliminate the hepatitis. But it is impossible to eliminate it now. So for this about 24 years, we just try to everything we can do. So you can see here, the World Hepatitis initially is May 19. That is long ago. So we will have some activity. You can see here for NGO, we can have education. So we go to school. This is elementary school, and all the students, all the general population. For military school or just for primary school, why? The students are so young. They have this information about the liver disease, for example, hepatitis, then become cirrhosis or become HCC. I think the most important thing is they go home to tell his or her mother's father, grandfather, grandpa about this condition. So education is the most important one I think we NGO can offer. So just distribute all the knowledge about that. So also you can see after that, we have some activities to devote this one. So we can see for the World Hepatitis Days, we all have some, here, MI number 12, okay, etc. So you can see, oh, in Kaohsiung, we have her come here long ago. So I think this is what we can do. And also for World Hepatitis Day, now we just want to devote everything to let everybody know about the World Hepatitis Day. Because if the patient or if individual, everyone knows Hepatitis Day, why we have a day just for hepatitis. We have diabetes days, etc., TB, tuberculosis. By this kinds of distribution, everyone will have the idea that hepatitis is quite important. That's enough. This is very important information that is quite important that we have such a days. So this is in a village. This village have 30% of anti-HCV positive rate in southern Taiwan. 30% in average. Very important because maybe something like. So we just want to have some activities. You can see here, they will have a comic, some competition, some activities we offer to let them know that is very, very important to have the idea of hepatitis C or everything. So you can see for the government, we also try NGO can cooperate with the government administration or anything to just propose and talk about the hepatitis days. Okay, so that we will do that. So we also have the right or have the chance to attend the World Hepatitis Summit. You can see here, that is in Brazil. Of course, that is my first time come to South America. But we will try to distribute. This is also the, in addition to the professor, doctors, and also the representative who comes from NGOs. And we are so happy that we also have this Hepatitis Summit here in Taiwan. Last time, we all know that is important to get connection with all over the world. So that's important. So if we want to get rid of or elimination the hepatitis C, I think I have to tell you that the Taiwan government says that we will eliminate hepatitis C by 2025. Oh, just several years later. But we have to, always. So do the best to do that. So we have some, maybe we can say that that's barrier, hurdle, or anything, obstacles for the care stake. So for a doctor or for patients, we have to know that by the first screening, get the diagnosis, and then be treated, and ultimately very happy to wait for the something that is not good. That is the HCC. So, however, we have to try our best to develop the hepatitis, then can be treated, but you have to notice the complications thereafter. Even we can treat the disease and cure the disease. However, we just slow down or decrease the incidence of hepatitis consequences, such as HCC, hepatocellular carcinoma. So I think NGO is very important. We can do many things in these ways. So in Taiwan, we just try to do everything. This is just a reminder that the awareness is very important. A patient do not have the chance to know the HCV infection. He or she will not have any chance to get access linked to the treatment or linked to care. So to get the first screening is very important. You can see 2012, our report, just 50% of the patients have the awareness. So we have to do a lot of things for screening. So government is very important. So everyone have to know the resources comes from government or NGO. We Taiwanese have this screen that is 45 to 79 years old. You have once to check up free. This is important. In German, that is 35 years old, etc. So government will have this information. We NGO or we as a doctor, I just want to tell you that you have these resources to get the diagnosis or screening of the HCV infection. So you can see here, that is a great job because we estimate that we have 10 million adults have to be screened by this project. We have now, okay, 10 million, we have screened 2 million by this project. Of course, we somebody have the regional insurance checkup, etc. But by this project, single project, we have 2 million now. You can see the anti-HCV prevalence rate is 3.1 in Taiwan. This report and the diagnosis of RNA, that is just a 65. You know, you have the virus, you have been treated. You don't have a virus, okay, that's very happy. Okay, so everyone knows that. And finally, we have 90% of the treatment rate. That is quite high, but we have to do the best to do that. I want to show you one example we have done. This is the cooperation of NGO and our school and the hospital. In the Taoyuan, that is Kaohsiung, 10% of the anti-HIV positive rate, aboriginal area, 10%. We go there, you can see, not a rubber. This is just like for service. Go to the field for the screening because we want to screen 90% and then get treated. So we have medication here comes from the government and also, of course, the national health insurance reimbursement, then get cured. So you can dress very great to have a photo with me that they get cured. Okay, so I want to tell you, 1,000 patients screen 100%, and we treat the patient needed to be treated 98%. Get the elimination of hepatitis C in this village. So this is a cooperation of the NGO after the screening initially, and we doctor do the best to get the link to treatment and the care for them. So I think I have some ideas that is just a response to the barriers to the elimination. So for everyone have to know that screening is very important to get a test, check that, do you have the diseases? Of course, the reinfection is a problem. So to reduce the risk behaviors is also important. That is what we NGO or what we can do in school or in hospital. And then all the efforts just link to the treatment. Since the treatment is quite good, the effective treatment we have and the government just pay all the money in Taiwan. No $1 have to be paid by the patients for treatment of hepatitis C. That is very, very great. And then after that, we simplify the treatment and then get the patient the follow-up. So I think if we NGO and the government and the academic school or the hospital, everyone can do the best to try to understand the procedure and the importance of the screening, treatment, and the follow-up. I think we have very, very great chance to let all the hepatitis patients very happy. Okay, that's all my talk today. Thank you much. Yeah.
So much. It's so great to see that partnership between clinical and NGOs having the great impact, especially in a village-based micro-elimination program like we've seen in other places in the world as well. It's great. And also the trip down memory lane for the Alliance. I mean, it really shows that Taiwan has been with the Alliance since the beginning and continues to be an important part. And of course, we're planning the next Hepatitis Summit in Lisbon. So we're inviting all of you there for sure. And we really hope in 2026 that we will come to Asia with the summit. So yeah, so we're really excited about that as well. So let's move on to our next speaker, which is Dr. Saeed Hamid. He's professor of medicine and director of clinical trials unit at the Aga Khan University in Karachi, Pakistan. And he'll be speaking about harnessing the public-private partnerships for viral hepatitis elimination.
Yeah. Okay, got it. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much for this kind invitation, and it really is nice to be here in Taiwan, where hepatitis C is going to be eliminated in 2 years' time. I'm going to tell you a very different story, so please be prepared for it. I may have an inherent bias because I work in the private sector. It's a private university, so and I'm going to talk about public-private partnerships. So, but hopefully the figures will tell me that I don't have really a big bias. So let me start with the problem at hand. Hepatitis C. Pakistan is now the biggest burden country for viral hepatitis in the world. The little block that you see missing is Nigeria. Everywhere else, this is Asia Pacific. So we're not doing well. Worse than that is the fact that our hepatitis C epidemic is increasing, not decreasing. These are latest figures from a couple of our provinces, big provinces, where we repeated the surveys. Punjab has gone up to almost 9%. Sindh has gone up to 6.1%. That makes it about 10 million viremic patients in the country. So every 20 minutes, a Pakistani dies of hepatitis C related complications, either liver cirrhosis or liver cancer. And this is something that Homi Razavi put in to say that HCV carries the same cancer risk as smoking 20 cigarettes a day. And so this is just to try and sell this to our policymakers. The trouble, Pakistan on paper has a very robust public health sector system. And we start with the basic health units, go to the rural health units, district general hospitals, and then the tertiary care hospitals. That's all very fine, but the lower part of the system really does not work. The basic health units do not work. The rural health centers do not work. And if you see, we call this an inverted pyramid system. So the population is mostly in the basic health units, whereas the funding, as you can see, is all to the private to tertiary care hospitals. When you get down to the basic health units, there is really literally no funding or very little funding. Now, if we want to turn this around, it is going to be a heck of a job to get the basic health units and the rural health centers up to the speed of testing and even treatment, if that is going to be the case. On the other hand, we know that there is a huge amount of utilization of the private health sector for ambulatory care. This is an EMRO report, and you can see Pakistan, 77% of people will access the private sector for their routine ambulatory care. This may have changed a little bit, but it certainly is close to 70%. So, and there are a huge number of registered private health facilities, and they are located all over the place. So, for example, in Punjab, we have 2,724 hospitals, or small or big medical centers, registered by what we call the healthcare commissions. And similarly, we have about 7,000, nearly 6,500 GP clinics in Punjab that are officially registered. I'm not even talking about the parallel sector, which is the non-registered GPs and so on and so forth. So this is a huge resource that we need to utilize. Sindh, a smaller province, about 738 hospitals, clinics registered by the Healthcare Commission, and nearly 2,500 registered general practitioner clinics. So why aren't we using this? So just another report from the WHO to say with the number of private versus public diagnostic facilities. And you look at Pakistan, the larger numbers are in the private sector and a smaller numbers in the public sector. So, and moreover, the private laboratory networks have a national outreach now. So these are just 4 examples. The first one is our example, which is where we have 292 sample collection points nationally. And we cover about 100 districts, and we have a maximum capacity of 22,500 testing to be done every month. So we're not alone. There are others. Choktai Lab, for example, has similar outreach because they cover about 100 districts out of the 150 that we have altogether in the country. Shaukat Khanam is smaller. Indus is very large now. So there is a lot of capacity. So what we did recently was a short consultancy with for the Asian Development Bank to promote private-public partnerships, and these are some of the points that I would like you to ponder upon. The public sector, even if equipped to full capacity, is unlikely to cater to the volume of actively screened referrals and hence may not meet national targets. So by current accounts, we are not supposed to eliminate by 20, at least even by 2050. We have the COVID experience when private and public labs and facilities came together and did an enormous amount of testing. So we need to learn from those. Smaller neighborhood private clinics or individual general practitioners are the first recourse for many of these HCV patients. And there is more trust in these smaller clinics and general practitioners because they are from the community. But these people lack referral pathways and standardized guidelines. Successful examples of engaging general practitioners are there for hepatitis C in some cases, for TB screening cases and treatment that have been implemented by NGOs, as Dr. Dai said, and medical charities. Appetite and motivations to partner with the government. So there are some caveats. People are not comfortable, private people are not comfortable to partner with governments because they're not clear about the motivations and motives of the government, whether they will get paid for the service, will not get paid for the service. So there has to be upfront some financial benefits, public recognition, capacity building opportunities, and presence of trusted figures that can be trusted so that they will get their money's worth, whatever is due to them at the end of the day. And we give examples. So for example, I hope you can see this slide. It's a little small print. You could use private facilities in the way that they have their facilities set up. So for example, for a very basic facility, you could just ask them to report into the national system. Nothing more than that. For a second tier facility, you could start to expand testing. You'd ask them to do a screening, and you can give them subsidized testing, and then you give them a pathway for referral. There are certainly facilities where you could expand to even to treatment, where people will be very comfortable with just a little amount of training to have treatment and so on, even there. And finally, you could do there could be private sector facilities which will do the whole thing in totality. So that would really enormously augment what we are going to do. Now, the government is always worried about the fact that there is, what about quality, what about reporting, etc. So if we can set up some e-monitoring reporting systems from neighborhood private clinics, private hospitals, diagnostics labs, blood banks, there are more private blood banks in our country than there are in the public sector. So all of these, if they feed in to the government facilities, to the government records, there will be a central data repository that can be checked for quality. So this is doable, and I think this is something that we need to really push hard in situations like ours. And Pakistan is not alone. There are a huge number of countries where the private sector is certainly very, very robust and much heavier than the public sector. So in summary, Pakistan has a large burden of hepatitis C infection, enough to overwhelm the public sector, the public health sector. So we estimate that we will need to screen about 170,000 people. Remember, that is 3 times or more than 3 times Egypt. So these are 3 Egypts, 3.5 Egypts put together. That's a huge task for anybody to do this. So public sector engagement is essential to supplement the public sector efforts, and it also enables decentralization of services in a graded fashion, as I've showed, and that may be acceptable to government programs so that the quality is maintained. There are ifs and buts on both sides of the table, which need to be aligned for a common cause. So on the one hand, there is suspicion of the government of using people and not giving them the adequate payment. On the other hand, there are suspicions about quality of delivery, quality of service, etc. So if we can marry those two together, I think we've got a winner. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And it's just such a great example of how complicated health systems can be, right? But with some creative thinking and good partnerships, then there's so much that can be done, right? Which is incredible. So thank you so much. So our final speaker is Professor Jacki Chen, who is the founder and director of the Taiwan Hepatitis Information and Care Association, and professor at Rutgers Robert Wood Johnson Medical School in New Jersey. Jacki, take it away.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate and thank you for the invitation. So I guess we can do this as a, maybe we can just open up for questions now. This is such a small group. And anyone online, is this being live streamed? No, I'm just curious. I saw this is, I don't know if anyone watching online, but if it's a closed door, small group discussion, we can just say whatever we want to say, right? Isn't it true? It's a free country, we can say whatever. Is it? Well, I did write down something here, but first thing I want to say is that I sort of very much appreciative for WHIF to invite me to come to this session, because I'm aware of this one since 2019 in Boston. Dr. Su Wang come to me and say, you know, we have a medical visionary group discussion like this. And I said, well, medical. So first thing, I'm not qualified. I'm not a medical provider. I cannot see patient. I cannot prescribe any drug. So I didn't go. I didn't know. And I didn't know that I was qualified until today, actually, in the ASLD meeting. I wasn't invited, and I just ran into Cary, and he said, well, we have a meeting. Come join us. Do you want to give me a poster? And I just jumped into the room with 4 people there, and it was so delightful to see a whole group of like 40 professionals there. That was a great session. I was hoping we can have more here, but obviously I don't know the reason. Dr. Dai and Dr. Hsu, okay, that's one thing. Just call me. If you don't mind, I just want to make a correction. It's not Dr. Su, okay? Su is Su Wang, Dr. Su, that's S-U, and this is Dr. Hsu. So before everyone forget, this is, so Hsu in Taiwan it's H-S-U. Am I teaching English now? Okay, H, you add H and then S-U is not pronouncing Su, is pronouncing Hsu in Taiwan. So his last name is Dr. Hsu. So don't mess up with Dr. Su, which is totally different. Sorry to make that suggestion. However, you see that in China will not be Dr. HSU. No one can pronounce that. Believe me, only people in Taiwan, only you people in Taiwan, you can pronounce. But after I moved to US for 40 years, I have hard time to pronounce anyone's English name in Taiwan. It's so complicated, so different. Okay, so because you use a different spelling system. All right, if it's in China, it's called XU. So that's Dr. Hsu, XU. So if you see XU, it's the same last name as HSU. All right.
They actually have tons of different spellings for the same word.
So yeah, unfortunately, XU, no one can pronounce that except people in China. So in US or in Europe, maybe you will have to say HSHE. It's she. It's like she, her, she. So that's Dr. Hsu. So you see how complicated it is, and this is the same thing. How complicated I believe with viral hepatitis, as complicated as that. One thing I want to also say, actually, I made a suggestion to Jessica to get this meeting started earlier at 7:30, so we don't miss the 9 o'clock my Dr. Liao. So I'm lucky. I'm happy that you did the suggestion. But next time, maybe you will be able to bring in more audience if we maybe take that suggestion. Maybe don't take my suggestion, but anyway, I'm going to suggest it anyway. But you need to consider maybe one thing, put a breakfast buffet. That's what you want to do. So you order all the people who doesn't or who cannot afford to add the breakfast plan to their hotel bill, just to save some money. Now they can get a breakfast here. That's first suggestion. Very good. Probably don't take it. Second suggestion is that have Dr. Tai to come up and sing morning singing. That's another trick. You can attract a lot of people to come into to the audience. That's the best suggestion. Don't take my suggestion, okay? So THICA, which is actually brand new and is also almost no funding. It's only a member fee. We charge anyone who wants to become a member of our organization. You need to pay an annual fee. It's not a foundation. We don't have enough money to put up as a foundation. So it's a member-based program. So we are trying to attract member, and you have to pay the fee and then to cover some costs that we're going to have activity. But luckily we still have around 100 people as a member, so they pay annual fee to our association. I really appreciate. So all the effort is from the member, and we cannot see patient, we cannot prescribe, we cannot provide any. Sometimes even could be dangerous if we provide, or people could be blameless if we provide any like something related to medical recommendation, then we could be in trouble. We don't want to be in jail for for life sometime. All right. But anyway, we tried our best. So I think this is one word I want to say is that you want to reach everyone. For example, that for the elimination with viral hepatitis, right? You want to reach anyone, you want to reach everyone. You need everyone's help. Not just a hospital or medical doctor. That's just not enough. You want to reach everyone, you need everyone. Everyone can help, and that's what we do. We are just missing at the bottom, to find those people who have been missed by the medical system, and we do find some of them. And one very recent example is that a patient. There are 3 examples I can say. One example is that one patient is just so hated the medical system in Taiwan. He said, "I'm not going to see the doctor. So give me the medication so I can treat my Hep C infection." I said, "We are not doctors. We cannot give you medication. You have to see your doctor and then get a prescription, and then you can get the medication, and it's free from the government. What's wrong with you that you want to, you want to get treated from, you want to help from us without getting a free medication from a doctor and with a capable care from a doctor?" It's so complicated, but anyway, he eventually gets treated and gets cured. That's the first case. The second case is on the opposite. This is a patient who have been treated again and again and again, 3 times, failed 3 times, and we said, "Well, what's wrong with you?" So these are the patients who come to us, all right, because he doesn't want to release those information to his doctor, or maybe his doctor referred to us. I'm giving up on this patient. Every time I cure him, 3 months later, he come back and with reinfection. I don't know what's going on. Now go talk to Dr. Chen or Jacki and see what we can say. So we have some people who are so capable, not me, who are so capable and able to get them engaged, which means that he's going to give you pressure, make sure he's monitored and talk to him every day, make sure he's taking the medication, get treated. So that patient is now on treatment for 4 months now, because this is the 3rd time for HCV treatment here in this country. All right, but we also make sure that he gets a care, that he go back to visit his doctor regularly and make the regular checkup. So those are the things that what I'm trying to say, that in order to reach everyone, you need everyone's help. And I'm hoping that we can sort of fulfill that role, that for anyone who is missing, that we can help. That's my goal, that I think we can contribute. Of course, I hope that one day we are able to go out to the street, like Dr. Tai and Dr. Xu is doing this, like go out to the street and do the screening, do the testing, do the treatment, give them medication, and everyone will be cured, everyone will be happy. Yeah, but we don't want to, we cannot do that, otherwise we will be jailed for life. All right, so we open for discussion now. There's actually now there are just too many things I can say, and I like to say. One thing is I want to thank Cary for actually THICA is also a member of the World Hepatitis Alliance. We are a voting member. We are so honored to be a voting member on that. And there's something that I want to say. If it's not live stream and no one is watching from China, is that I approached to them. I said, if I didn't say this, but I was thinking, if you don't grant my request, I'm going to quit WHO, which is that they put us a province of China and say Taiwan, part of China. This is nothing political, but I'm just saying, then, you know, how can we be a separate region? You know, we are totally different system. How can we operate independently if you have put us under the China, you know, umbrella? So I insist just remove the last few words. And I'm so grateful that was eventually granted. So I'm really appreciate. Thank you very much for that. All right. So now Taiwan is Taiwan under WHO. All right, great. That's great. Any questions so far? No, what else do I want to say? I haven't even touched any topic there. So what's the third topic? Decentralization. Do you want me to say that? Or it's already covered now? Or we can open for any discussion since it's a small group discussion. Anyone has any question? Now I can, Rhea is here. So I want to, another story. We had an interview with a patient who worked just right here at World Trade Center in the richest area in Taiwan, okay? Just 5 minutes away from here. So he walked to us. You know, we make an appointment and say, we want to, actually it's Hep B Foundation from US. They want to record some story for people, for Taiwanese hepatitis patient, Hep B patient, so to make into their story bank. So they initially offered me, you know, they give me compensation, not me compensation, give compensation for patient to be interviewed. So I said, you need to give them some money, otherwise I'm going to have hard time to ask them to come. They're going to miss one day of work and things like that. So Hep B Foundation was so helpful and so generous to give them a sort of honorarium for them to come over for interview. So, but the person who came for interview yesterday, actually after I gave him the honorarium, he gave it back to us. That this is a donation to your organization. So I'm so grateful for that. But what happened to this patient is that we have actually been with him for a long time because his father is actually Hep C. So his father was cured of Hep C long before the national reimbursement here in Taiwan, but he was cured. So he was very grateful to us. But then we sort of then neglected that the person who came to interview, actually had Hep B. And he was totally ignored. He said, you know, the doctor said, I have Hep B, I'm okay. I don't have I'm in a gray zone, the so-called gray zone, Hep B gray zone. I've been pounding on that gray zone for a long time. Not only that, he's not even qualified for gray zone. His viral load is below 2,000. Okay, so that's why I talked to Dr. Dietrich. So what do you mean? Why you miss that group? You know, gray zone, below 2,000 viral load, and then with an elevated enzyme level, and what do? You ignore them? You cannot ignore them. They could be in serious trouble. And this is exact that patient. He was, because of that, he has a false sense of security. He went back to check out his doctor, also ignored him because your viral doesn't qualify for treatment. If you want to treat them now, then you're going to be paying out of pocket. And if I give you a prescription, I'm like against the guideline. I'm giving you a treatment against the guideline. I might be in the jail. Maybe you were thinking about that. Is that true? I don't know. But it's against the guideline. And that is true, not just in Taiwan, also in the USA, right? If you treat someone out of the guideline, well, if it is cured, you're lucky. But if something wrong, you don't have to go to jail. Okay. But that is a concern everywhere, and that's why the guideline, the policy is very important because that allows everyone to be protected, right? Otherwise, you're not protected, and no one You want to help people. You want to make sure you are not going to be in trouble yourself, right? So I think that's one thing. That's why such organization, medical organization, is so important. I think I've said enough, right? You want to open up for discussion?
Sure, yes.
I do have a lot more to. I still have a lot to share, but maybe you'll bring up to me and we can have
Yes.
open discussion. We have friends from India, and which is, I know the Indian program for a long time because I read news from Indian as well. And he just told me that they offer free screening for everyone. That's one thing Taiwan have to learn. Not 45 years old. I was sad. What's that? You don't screen people for Hep B or Hep C if they are below 45. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? How much is it going to cost for screening? Even Indian can afford it. China can afford it. Why not Taiwan? Come on, release that. You have to remove that restriction. You cannot just say, you can only be treated if you are above that age level. 45, that's pretty old. To me, patient we interviewed yesterday, and so he came to us yesterday. That's like 30, 40 years after he knew that he has HIV. And he was thinking that that was not too late for him to get started treatment. And why he went to see the doctor and why he get treatment? He has esophageal bleeding. He was turned out blood, and he was saying that, well, something is wrong. His friend said, something is wrong. You vomiting and it's dark. It's actually blood. So this is the decompensated liver cirrhosis. So he get into the decompensated liver cirrhosis before he can get a prescription, before he feel like he is sick and need to see a doctor and get a prescription and get a reimbursement by a national health insurance to get treated with Hep B. I'm frightened to tell him the truth that it's too late for treatment. I didn't say that, right? And I believe there's nothing to there. I think that's all wrong. It's under treatment. I asked him whether you know what is going to happen from now on. So he understands that I'm going to be on this treatment for continuous for the rest of his time, maybe. All right. And luckily that was will be covered by the national health insurance. Yeah. So what I want to say, I asked him, if you go back 10, 20 years earlier, what would be your decision? Because I cannot change anything, move back. But if you just imagine you can move back 20 years ago, what would be your decision at that time? He said, well, I can afford it, 3,000 Taiwan dollar for a month. I can afford it. So he's going to join our banquet tonight. And not only that, he also not only give us back the honorarium as a donation, he also say, I can help you to hire some performer that we had yesterday with the banquet. I was so honored. I don't know what he's going to bring, but he said he's going to bring someone to help for the banquet. That's great. But we look back on him that he should be treated 10, 20 years earlier. Then what we should do now is to treat anyone that is younger than him, which are in their 30 or 20, and they should be treated. So when they are in their 40, they won't go into his condition. So that's what the vision should be that we have to look ahead of time. We cannot look back, well, we have to look ahead of time. So there's nothing too late, but you have to treat now, right? That's my final word. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Jacki. Jacki was actually one of the first community members I met when I started the job at the Alliance. We met in New York, downtown. Do you remember, Jacki?
Oh, yeah.
We had fried chicken, and yeah, it was terrific. Then we have hamburger.
In New York, we have hamburger and French fries.
Oh yes, that's true. Actually, yeah.
I want to say something is that I really appreciate at that time. I know no one in the world about hepatitis. And I met Henry Chen, not the Henry Chen from Hong Kong, but the Henry Chen from New York. And he was such a strong advocate for viral hepatitis. So he said, well, this is Cary Chen. It's going to come to New York and come. You are only an hour away from New York, so come here and we'll introduce you. So I was so grateful that Cary took on the appointment, and then we sit in a small New York restaurant and eating hamburger and French fries.
Now we're here. in Taiwan is terrific. Great. All right, so I think we can open it up to the floor. If people have any comments or contributions around decentralization or community involvement in services. Is anyone going to be brave? Jenny. Brave? Go on.
Just Just listening to Howard's presentation, and I know I've sort of been beating this drum for a while, talking about decentralization and simplification and the fact that you cannot guarantee whether that patient is actually going to develop cancer, just reminded me of cardiovascular. I mean, the world has bought into that. The world is, everybody's being treated with it who has elevated cholesterol or high blood pressure. Those doctors cannot guarantee that those patients are going to go and have a heart attack, but the world has actually funded it. And it just reminded me years ago of, the back blocks of rural China. I was sort of with a team who was studying the distribution channels into rural China. And you go into the pharmacies there. We were just testing to see how much hepatitis medication was there. But on the shelves were all the cardiovascular medicines and for heart disease and liver protectors and Chinese medicine, but just nothing else for hepatitis. So there's some, I don't know what is it? Why is hepatitis so complicated? How do you turn it around, and what drove the cardiovascular movement to accept just these two markers and you're on drugs? That's what we're aiming for, aren't we?
Would anyone like to comment? Or no, go ahead.
No, comment. No. This, I agree with you totally, but I think you refer to Hep B, right? Because for Hep C, everybody get treated. So for Hep B, currently, the guidelines suggest that there should be some evidence of existing liver injury to indicate treatment. So you must, the patients must have, let's say, fibrosis, advanced fibrosis, cirrhosis, elevated serum liver enzymes, blah blah blah. Sorry, this condition just to prove that there is liver injuries, then you get treated. But I agree with you that the best strategy is to prevent the injuries, and we do learn something from the literatures or our own studies that if we start treatments at more advanced stages, then some of the patients will still go on to develop liver cancer or poor outcomes. But if the disease can be stopped early, then, well, frankly, the incidence of liver cancer will be as low as the uninfected participants. But if the patients already develop, let's say, advanced fibrosis, then even despite continuous vasoperations, some of them will go on because probably the carcinogenic process has already been taking place long before the initiation of treatment. So I totally agree with on this comment. And the reason why it's more complicated, but people argue that we don't have a cure for Hep B right now. So we have to be thoughtful, considerate, and careful about treating patients. But again, it's about uncertainty and risk judgments and risk assessment. So since nobody really knows what is going to happen for sure, then I am an advocate for let the patients get involved in these decisions. We know this medication is not going to cure the virus, but you want to, let's say, you want to take a statin for a period of time or decades to prevent the occurrence of cardiovascular. I don't want to take statin for that, but someone might say, yes, I would like to take statin. Why not? That's my comment for that.
We had a former dean of our university many years ago. He's dead now. But his famous saying was, we found the enemy and the enemy is us. And the reason I say that is, and you've given a very fine example of the cardiovascular area, particularly statins. Look how strong the statin lobby has been, and they've got everybody on board. We have made ourselves difficult because of our guidelines. I mean, the APASL guidelines are I'm sorry to say, I'm a member of the APASL and a former executive committee member. We have the worst hepatitis B guideline possible out of the 3 or 4 big societies. It's going to change soon, and that it will be it is already too late. And if we are able to simplify as much as possible, well, why not? Why should people not be on treatment and wait till their 45th birthday or whatever to be on treatment? Doesn't make sense at all. There is a worry, of course, so hepatologists, I am afraid hepatologists think of themselves as the most intellectual people of all the lot. And that is really, cardiologists, I think through their knees, for example. I'm sorry. And therefore, they will agree to everything. Hepatologists won't agree to many of these things that we are trying to do. In other words, simplification and decentralization. Thank you.
So follow up on that. Actually, there are 2 points. One is with Dr. Hamid about the hepatology. I think I heard this from probably Dr. Robert Gish. I'm not 100% sure. Is that who is treating HIV infected patients? Hepatologists? No. Immunologists? Cardiologists? No. Infectious disease, isn't it? Is HIV in the infectious disease category? Right? Okay, so maybe if we would do this, let's take HBV and HCV out of hepatology and put it into infectious disease. I think everything would change, isn't it? So one thing that is being proposed by Dr. I think Gish or many other people, if this has been an infectious disease category, we will all move to infectious disease annual meeting instead of hepatology disease annual meeting. And then they're going to treat it as infectious disease, which means you have a contagious infection, you have contagious virus in your body. You need to get rid of that virus, not to treat the damage to the organ. All right. So everything would be viewed differently. We'll solve every problem.
Let me just add to this. Why infectious diseases? Why not general practitioners, internists, the whole lot? I mean, these drugs are as harmless as you can get. Yes, there may be a 1 in 10,000 example of something going wrong, or 1 in 100,000 example of something going wrong, but that risk should be acceptable in the face of the larger public health issue.
Oh, very short response only. As you know, the hepatitis treatment is not easy at all, or about 6 or 7 years ago, because we just have the PEG interferon ribavirin. Currently, I think, and you think, everybody knows that to cure the hepatitis C is so convenient, so easy. That we cannot imagine before. But I just want to say, because it is quite easy, so we should distribute everyone and expand the treater to get the patient be treated by anyway. So decentralized is decentralization is very important. Currently, a little problem just for the B is we don't have the cure regimen. So hepatitis B, we also do our best to try to develop a regimen to cure that. Other day, if that is so simple, just like hepatitis C, I think it's so easy. So currently, we cannot but to have some strategy to treat some patients or things that some patient did not need to be treated just because the medication. I think we are quite satisfied about the development of the treatment of hepatitis B currently. However, we want to get the cure regimen for the hepatitis B, just like hepatitis C. I think it's okay, and I hope that we will achieve that very soon. Just a little thinking to respond to you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think we all hope that. Yeah, absolutely. Jack.
Okay, a couple of issues. One, I used to have Hep C. I got infected in 1981, lived with Hep C for 25 years. I'm not very good with numbers. Got cured when I went to my local GP. The Australian government funds DAAs for everyone with hepatitis C. I was educated. I knew that I had been diagnosed a long time before. I knew what I had. I knew that that a cure was available, and so I used it. That is really rare around the world. I was thinking another rarity is that people are diagnosed. Most people with hepatitis, with viral hepatitis, are not diagnosed, and when they are diagnosed, it's often badly. And particularly within this region, where people are tested and diagnosed in educational settings, in workplaces, and for visas. And that kind of develops a framework of fear about getting diagnosed with hepatitis, because it can reduce your potential. You know, you can get excluded from workplaces, you can get excluded from schools, you get excluded from jobs. And within this region, where a lot of the work is done in countries away from your country of origin, that's a really, really important kind of issue. You're all clinicians. Jackie, I'm not sure if you're a clinician. No, I apologize. One of it is that you see hepatitis as being really important. As a person with hepatitis, it was boring. Like it absolutely, you know, most of my life living with hepatitis, it was not an issue. I was a very bad patient, but because it was asymptomatic, I had plenty of other things to think about in my life rather than my infection. So it's not a focus. The people with hepatitis B, particularly people with hepatitis B, a lot of them have got far more pressing issues of an immediate nature that they need to worry about rather than an asymptomatic disease. Arguing against that also is that we look at hepatitis as Hep B particularly as an infection of the individual, and it's not. It's an infection of the family. It's occurred through generations. People are really well educated about hepatitis B, but not as a virus. Not as they know it's a horrible thing that can kill people and that has killed people. So that is also another complicating factor. Traditional within this area, within this region, it's also quite easy. It's a lot easier for people to use traditional medicines. You know, I did a needs assessment of people with viral hepatitis in China, and so many of them talked about when they were diagnosed, they would use the family recipe. And the family recipe, I have no idea what it was, but it was you know, there's a lot of kind of knowledge about hepatitis. It's just not in ways that are necessarily useful for responding. I'm done. I'm scared.
Any response? Yeah, go ahead.
One thing about that's exactly true. That this is a silent disease, and it's still remaining a silent disease because there's no symptom. Even for myself, I'm a Hep B patient. So I was diagnosed. I suspected that I have viral hepatitis B when I was very young, probably in college, because I see, you know, my classmate, you know, who kind of almost died of Hep B acute exacerbation. He was hospitalized for a long time, and before he eventually recovered. So at that time, we wasn't, well, we all probably have, or we have to be aware, don't get infected by that. But later on, when I was eventually tested, yes, of course, I'm positive for Hep B. But then it lagged for like 10, 20 years because I wasn't eligible for treatment at that time, or because there's no good treatment regimen at that time. But I have to disagree. And one thing is that there are very good, effective treatment for Hep B right now with very high barrier to resistance. You can take the pill, no side effect, and you can effective. It's that you can get rid of the virus. It's becoming undetectable. Not only that, it's protective. It's going to protect your liver from getting worse. You will not develop fibrosis, and that has been proven. And with a talk from Dr. Freeman yesterday, and it was great. You know, this is something that is effective. So for decentralization, I have an idea. I always have new idea because I learn new thing every day, and every day I have new ideas. So my new idea today is different from my new idea yesterday, and tomorrow I'm going to have a different idea. That makes life more interesting, isn't it? Like you wake up in the morning and you forgot everything happened yesterday. So everything starts from the beginning. Now, for decentralization, I understand what you are trying to say is to decentralize, and then that the service provider to expand it to like family doctor, to rural area, or to private sector or other things. I think the decentralization should be to expand it out of hepatology, move it into every discipline of medicine. You know, no, don't worry, you will have a lot of patients with liver problem.
Can I just respond? So, Jack, in answer to your question, just a thought which has come to mind. WHO is pushing very heavily for HCV self-testing. From your words, it seems to me that we should be pushing much more for hepatitis B self-testing, rather than for hepatitis C self-testing, because I think as you point out, the fallout from a hepatitis B surface antigen positivity is more, perhaps, than the fallout from a hepatitis C antibody test, which is positive. Do you agree?
Yeah, and I think there's kind of risks and benefits with that. I get really worried about self-testing stuff because when I got diagnosed, it was the diagnosis was framed in a way that it was given to me, like information was given to me by someone who I vaguely trusted, my general practitioner. And she knew my history. So it was kind of like, wasn't rocket science. For me, self-testing and being diagnosed through a self-test, I do worry when people understand that hepatitis is something to be feared, as opposed to something in which testing can save your life. But so I think, yeah, I have arguments with this at the Burnett Institute around point of care testing, because it's kind of like, oh, the medicos are really excited about it. And I'm like, yeah, I'm a bit scared because I don't know, there will be unanticipated consequences that come from it, but that doesn't mean not do it. I think we kind of have to deal with the unanticipated consequences.
Great, thank you.
So regarding the self-testing, I think when we think about supply, so everything is in place. We have kits available, suppose, and I agree with Jack that if the demand is not there, people will not come and use it. Like if I give the example of India, we have everything in place now. So if you see the documents, action plans, if we talk about decentralization, we want our medical officers who are sitting at primary health centers to give the drugs. We don't want hepatologists or any specialist to give the drug. So hepatitis C is well authorized. They are authorized to give the drug in the program, but they're not doing it because they don't feel, or they don't have that kind of understanding of screening people, getting hepatitis B tested, and then initiating the treatment. Even we have in the plan, if you'll see, we have health and wellness centers which are well below the primary health centers, very close to community. So we have community health officers who are trained nurses. We want them to dispense the drug. So plan is that the medical officer will prescribe it. And after initiating the treatment, community health officers, they'll dispense the drug for 3 months and they'll do the follow-up part. So decentralization is something which is definitely should be advocated. For India, it's there in the plan. But the problem is that people they do not know, like to come up for screening. Medical officers, they do not know whom to screen. If you go in the field, you'll find kits available in the lab. Lab technicians do not know whom to test. And when I asked them, they said we are testing only pregnant females. So underutilization of the available services is also a big challenge, even if we go for decentralization. So I think we have to think about whether our decentralized peripheral health centers, healthcare workers, and community, they're ready to avail these services. So the solution is, I think, awareness, education, and capacity building.
Absolutely. And if you look at it from like even like a social marketing point of view, not only do you want to increase supply through the health systems, but you need to generate the demand from the other side. It's a super important point. Yeah.
If I may.
Of course.
So I totally agree with that. That is one way you need to decentralize, but in another way, that is to the point of Dr. Xu. Is so-called the famous now everyone want to do that is a shared decision, right? Is doctor want to do that. Patient doesn't want that. Most patients don't really like to have a shared decision. They want the doctor to tell me what to do that can help me. I think we have to be careful if we move even further with a shared decision. If you ask your patient to make the decision yourself, unless it's like at the final point that whether do you want to stop the treatment and go into hospice or you want to continue, the life support, that maybe a shared decision is necessary. Okay. Most of the other medical decisions should be made by expert doctor. Otherwise, if you ask your patient, he's going to give you a totally wrong decision by himself. He heard from his best friend that, this is the other way. And most of them would end up drinking a tea or herbal medicine or anything else that a magic cure for them. And that is obvious. We know those are not the right decision. And those are not decisions you should share with your patient. Okay, so I think as a medical provider and also a medical educator or like us, we need to take up some responsibility to tell the patient what is the best for you, and you have to do this. That's what
I agree with Professor. It is. It is not pushing my responsibility to the patients. It's not what I am trying to communicate. It's to acknowledge that the knowledge of the doctors, probably the best knowledge of everyone is limited. So I'm not saying that I won't advise my patients to do this or do that. Of course, I'm a certified healthcare providers. So I will advise definitely, and I will share with them the evidence I know. So I need to update my knowledge on this field. So it's not something like you Google on the internet and then pick up the one you like. It's not like that. And I'm definitely will not say you just pick ones. It's okay for me. I will probably go through this process. We got 2 or 3 options. Let's say get on treatment. Well, you are not qualified for the reimbursement criteria so far, but your serum viral exists to millions. The ALT is a little bit elevated, and we don't have evidence for advanced fibrosis right now. But according to the understanding of the natural histories of this disease, and perhaps because the patients, your work, your competitive activities as to visit the hospitals. So I might suggest that you start treatment. But this is your decision to whether agree with me or not. I'm not going to say that according to the rules, you should not be treated. That's it. Or according to my opinions, you should wait for a while. So I totally agree with Professor Chen's opinions that it's the obligation or responsibility of a doctor to exercise the best of his knowledge to help the patients. But what I'm trying to say is not to decide on behalf of the patients without even asking. That's what I'm trying to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from the audience?
Just a quick comment. And I think like Saeed, your presentation was great. And it really made me think, we really advocate for decentralization, but there are a lot of countries where the reality is that the primary healthcare system just isn't strong enough. And so I think it was really interesting you showing about all the private sector. So in Pakistan, is that the plan then is now to really reach out to the private sector, and how difficult and how long do you think that's going to take to be able to sort of put that in place in order to reach everyone that you need to reach?
Thank you, Jenny. It could be done tomorrow. There is just that mental roadblock which is there. The government is not willing to devolve what they think is their responsibility and perhaps their hour of glory to the other sector. Their hour of glory, we know, will never come unless they collaborate. And on the other hand, the private sector is wary of the government that they will use them and not provide them any benefit. And believe me, some of these people are just looking for public recognition. They don't even want the money. They just want the recognition and a pat on the back. That should be enough for many of these people. So it will come. It has to come. And that was the reason why the Asian Development Bank wanted us to do this consultancy. And we made a very strong plea for this. It is lying in somebody's office in the Ministry of Health, and hopefully this will see the light of the day.
Excellent, thank you. We just have a couple of minutes left, and I think we've seen a lot of movement, I think, on decentralization in the last 2 years in terms of WHO and the guidelines. The Hep C guidelines that came out last year really favored decentralization. We collaborated with Coalition Plus on doing the community values and preferences research on that. And every group that we asked, if you asked them where would they like to be tested for hepatitis C, they said by a community-based organization or in the community. Strangely, self-tests were the second most common response, and there aren't even any hepatitis C self-tests, which is quite interesting. So now the process is starting for hepatitis B this year, and to revise the guidelines around simplification. So maybe just as a final wrap-up question, we can just ask the panel about what's your biggest wish for the revision of the WHO guidelines regarding hepatitis B treatment? So whoever would like to start. What do you think would be most useful in simplifying the guidelines or the treatment pathways for hepatitis?
So this is a question everybody want to emphasize, and I think we have to. The first one thing, if the patient needed to be treated, they will get the access of link to the treatment for hepatitis B. Of course, currently the guideline have said that maybe you have to consider the age, consider the fibrosis status, or consider the LT level, consider of the viral load, etc. So all the academic or our researchers just want to do the best things is to modify the guidelines, because we will look on the evidence of the benefits and the outcomes and etc. So currently, I think the most of the three guidelines from the associations just talk about that maybe you have to look at the label of the virus. That means maybe 2000 or something that, but it is make progress that somebody will be treated even though without any viruses. For example, the decompensated patients. The decompensations you have to for us, for a doctor, I have to provide the medication. That means news for the decompensated patients, because you cannot tolerate anyone reflare or reactivation of the HBV. That is quite a special conditions, but I think we will just want to modify the guidelines. Of course, by the evidence, I think that is a job we researchers have to do. I think that is the job, but I think we may broaden and over just we have such a quite good new treatment. I hope one day we will have hepatitis C treatment regimen like DAA, for example. That days the decentralization will be very, very successful. I think everybody can get a cure. Okay, that's what I see.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So decentralization for hepatitis B goes against every bit of our grain as hepatologists. And I think that is going to be a massive hill to climb. But we need to climb it. We need to climb it. There's such good data from Taiwan to say that the higher the HBV DNA level, the higher the risk of cancer. Forget the ALT, forget the liver histology, forget everything. It is just the high level of HBV DNA which will create liver cancer. So what are we waiting for in terms of getting the quantitation done multiple times, in getting a fibroscan, in getting this and that and the other? Eventually, I think we will go through a number of convulsions, and we will eventually end up in a place where the treatment of hepatitis B will be as simplified as for hepatitis C. Does it take a year? Does it take 2 years? Does it take 5 years? I don't know, but it will eventually come.
2 words for addition. The first one, the treatment cannot be discontinuation by the patient cell because the reactivation is a risk. The second one, even you treat by the NUCs, you may have the opportunity to get the HCC. So I think the most important concern about the decentralization is the follow-up for the liver condition, because this is just not take a drug. You will have to also care about the liver condition. So this is not just a problem of virus only. The inflammation or the existing fibrosis may lead to cirrhosis and the possibility of HCC. That is very important. So for the decentralization for hepatitis C, currently we worry about the full follow-up or examination for the liver. If we do decentralization very good, I'm afraid that miss the points of the examination. You cannot find the HCC very earlier, or some other conditions we cannot control. So I think when we talk about the decentralization, we have to take this into consideration very, very carefully and emphasize that. I just want to add this one. Sorry. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if I actually read the WHO guideline, but I did read the APASO and ASLD and ESO guideline. So I'm not exactly, I'm just, maybe have some idea from overall news report, short sentence. But if you would be revising the WHO guideline at that level, I would consider it's a non-professional organization. It's not a medical guideline. I don't know whether that's true or not, but in that sense, maybe if you will revise it, it would be something that should consider separated into like what I have just said. If it's not liver disease, then you don't need to go to a hepatologist, which means that if you don't have a liver fibrosis, you don't have liver cirrhosis, if you don't have liver disease, you only have the viral infection, then give it to the infectious diseases. Infectious disease doctor would be willing to treat your infection rather than your disease. All right. So I think if we would push that, that might be able to move this forward, much faster.
On that, I have a slightly different opinions there, because this is a hepatotropic virus. So the virus infects the livers. So please let us do something. So I would say that even though the liver seems to be fine without advanced fibrosis, it's possible to be carcinogenic because of DNA. The fragments of the viral DNA could be integrated into the host genome. So I would still concur with Professor Dai that it's very important to keep following up patients, even the patients has been taking the treatment, even though the patient would say that my adherence to medication is good. I would still suggest that regularly sonographic surveillance with or without serum alpha fetoprotein is kind of be necessary, unless we can prove that for a group of patients that it would not be necessary. But for the time being, I'm afraid that we cannot be certain that if we can say that, oh, if you take the medication for good, there will be no chance at all for you for the patients to develop liver cancer. So I slightly have my opinion.
Great. Well, thank you very much. And we're over time, so I think we just have enough time to thank our fantastic panel. Thank you once again. And to thank our fantastic audience. Thank you once again. And we'll see you all very soon again, I hope. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, we should have a photo, yeah.